In episode 9 of The Testaments, one of the most shocking moments comes when Becka kills Grove after Daisy's accusation. But the scene is far more complicated than simple revenge. Underneath the violence is fear, manipulation, survival, and one terrifying truth about Gilead. Innocent people eventually become dangerous because the system leaves them no other choice. What makes this moment so powerful is that Becka doesn't feel like a killer before this episode. She's emotional, conflicted, and still trying to hold on to some kind of morality inside a world designed to destroy it. That's exactly why Grove's death hits so hard. It's not just a murder. It's the moment Becka finally understands what Gilead turns people into. The episode builds toward this slowly, and if you pay attention to the smaller details, the writers practically warn us that Becka is heading toward a breaking point long before the killing actually happens. At the center of everything is Daisy's accusation. Daisy's words changed the entire balance of power inside the episode. Up until this point, Grove operated in a space where men in Gilead usually survive untouched. He had authority, connections, and the confidence of someone who believed the system would always protect him. That confidence becomes his biggest mistake, because Daisy doesn't just accuse him emotionally, she exposes him publicly, and in Gilead, public exposure is deadly. The important thing many viewers missed is that Daisy's accusation isn't only about Grove's actions, it also forces Becka to confront her own silence. Throughout the season, Becka has constantly struggled between obedience and conscience. She sees terrible things happening around her, but like many people in Gilead, survival often means pretending not to see the truth. Daisy destroys that illusion. Once the accusation is made, Becka can no longer hide behind uncertainty. She now knows exactly what Grove is capable of. And even worse, she realizes he could easily continue hurting people because powerful men in Gilead almost never face consequences. That realization changes her psychologically. One of the smartest details in episode 9 is how Grove behaves after the accusation. He doesn't act afraid, he acts irritated. That's a huge difference. The writers intentionally show that Grove still believes he can control the narrative. He treats Daisy almost like an inconvenience, rather than a threat. That arrogance tells Becka something terrifying. The system will not stop him. And if the system refuses to stop him, then someone else has to. This is where the episode becomes deeper than a normal revenge story. Becca's decision isn't impulsive rage. It's born from hopelessness. She understands that official justice in Gilead doesn't really exist, especially for women. The law protects power, not innocence. That's why the killing scene feels emotionally tragic instead of victorious. Notice how the episode avoids turning Becka into some action hero. There's no triumphant music, no glamorous revenge framing. Instead, the atmosphere is tense, uncomfortable, almost suffocating. The camera lingers on Becka's face because the real conflict isn't physical. It's moral. She knows killing Grove will destroy a part of herself forever. But she also believes doing nothing would destroy even more people. That internal conflict is the true heart of episode 9. There's also an important symbolic layer here connected to Gilead's treatment of women. Throughout both The Handmaid's Tale and The Testaments, women are constantly forced into impossible choices. The system removes legal protection, then punishes them for the desperate actions they take to survive. Becka becomes another example of that cycle. Grove's death is horrifying, but the deeper horror is that Gilead helped create the conditions that made it inevitable. And the episode subtly reinforces this through dialogue and staging. Almost every conversation leading up to the murder emphasizes control, silence, or obedience. Even the quieter scenes feel tense because the characters are constantly calculating risk. Nobody speaks freely in Gilead, everybody edits themselves. That psychological pressure matters. By the time Becka kills Grove, she's already been emotionally cornered for episodes. Another fascinating detail is how Daisy unintentionally influences Becka beyond the accusation itself. Daisy represents something Becka struggles to become, someone willing to speak openly against power. Daisy acts despite the danger. Becka watches that courage firsthand. In many ways, Daisy's accusation becomes a catalyst for Becca's transformation. But here's the tragedy. Becka interprets courage through the brutal logic of Gilead. Instead of believing the truth will save people, she believes only force can stop evil now. That distinction is crucial. It shows how deeply Gilead corrupts moral thinking. Even resistance starts becoming violent because peaceful justice no longer feels possible. Some fans have debated whether Becka truly intended to kill Grove or whether things escalated unexpectedly. The episode leaves just enough ambiguity to make that discussion interesting. However, the emotional buildup strongly suggests Becka had already crossed an internal line before the confrontation even began. Her body language gives it away. She moves with someone who has already accepted consequences. That's why the scene feels so heavy. Becka isn't losing control in the moment. She already lost her innocence earlier when she realized nobody else would protect Daisy. There's also the possibility that the writers are paralleling Aunt Lydia's own history here. One recurring theme in the Testaments is how women adapt differently to surviving authoritarian systems. Some become collaborators. Some become rebels. Some become both at different times. Becca's choice reflects the dangerous middle ground between justice and vengeance. And the show refuses to give viewers an easy answer about whether she was right. That ambiguity is intentional. Because from one perspective, Grove absolutely represented an ongoing threat. Daisy's accusation revealed someone capable of abusing power without remorse. Becka stopping him may have saved future victims. But from another perspective, Becka crossing into violence proves Gilead is winning psychologically. The regime turns victims into instruments of brutality because it destroys all peaceful paths to accountability. That's what makes the scene unforgettable. It's not just about Grove dying. It's about Becka realizing she has become capable of killing. And honestly, the most heartbreaking moment might come after the act itself. Becka doesn't look relieved. She looks emotionally shattered. That detail matters because it separates her from characters in Gilead who kill casually in the name of ideology. Becka still feels human. That pain is evidence of conscience. The episode almost suggests that feeling guilt is the last remaining proof someone hasn't been fully consumed by Gilead yet. There are also hidden clues earlier in the season that Episode 9 pays off beautifully. Becka repeatedly shows discomfort with authority figures who exploit vulnerability. Small reactions, hesitations, and expressions hinted that she was observing far more than she openly admitted. The writers planted these details quietly so the murder wouldn't feel random later. And that's why the payoff works emotionally. This wasn't sudden character assassination. It was slow, psychological erosion. Another layer many viewers overlooked is how Grove underestimates women throughout the entire story. He operates with the arrogance common among powerful men in Gilead, assuming fear guarantees obedience forever. But fear creates unpredictability. Eventually, people pushed far enough stop caring about consequences. That's exactly what happens with Becka. The accusation forces her to confront a terrifying choice: either live with silence and complicity or destroy herself trying to stop someone dangerous. She chooses destruction. And Episode 9 leaves viewers with an uncomfortable question that sits at the core of the entire series. If justice disappears completely, what are ordinary people eventually willing to do? That question is what makes Becca's decision so haunting. The show doesn't present violence as empowering. It presents it as the final symptom of a society that has collapsed morally long before the bloodshed begins. By the end of the episode, Grove is dead. But the real casualty may be Becca's remaining belief that goodness alone can survive inside Gilead, and that realization could shape everything she becomes moving forward.